Beep, 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 beep. Hello, good peeps. Welcome to the Court of the EDI Jester. How are we today? Okay, warrior teacher, buy me a coffee, usual stuff. Come here, warrior teacher, come on. It's going to be great. August. Right, okay, so this is likely to be a long one, I think. Go get yourself a cup of tea, because there's something to me that's quite surprising about this. Won't be surprising to some of you, but it may be surprising to others. I'm going to take you through this particular thing, and the title is Transgenderism, a Pathogenic Meme, which I think is a very interesting title to begin with, because that's exactly what I think it is. Right, okay, so this comes from a website called thepublicdiscourse.com. The article, as usual, is in the Dubras. So without further ado, pause and grab yourself a cup of tea. The idea that one sex is a feeling, not a fact, has permeated our culture and is leaving casualties in its wake. Gender dysphoria should be treated with psychotherapy, not surgery. For 40 years, as the university's Distinguished Service Professor of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins Medical School, 26 of which were also spent as psychiatrist in chief of Johns Hopkins Hospital, I've been studying people who claim to be transgender. Over that time, I've watched the phenomenon change and expand in remarkable ways. A rare issue of a few men, both homosexual and heterosexual men, including some who sought sex change surgery because they were erotically aroused by the thought or image of themselves as women, has spread to include women as well as men. Even young boys and girls have begun to present themselves as of the opposite sex. Over the last 10 or 15 years, this phenomenon has increased in prevalence, seemingly exponentially. Now, almost everyone has heard of or met such a person. Publicity, especially from early examples such as Christine Jorgensen, Jan Morris and Renee Richards, has promoted the idea that one's biological sex is a choice, leading to widespread cultural acceptance of the concept. And that idea, quickly accepted in the 1980s, has since run through the American public like a revelation or meme, affecting much of our thought about sex. Interesting here from the beginning, this, isn't it? Talking about the 1980s, pre-1980s, this is when we had films like Dressed to Kill came out, right? Starting to illustrate this new mode of thinking within American public discourse. And as has been mentioned here already, it memes, as we'd expect it to. The champions of this meme, encouraged by their alliance with the broader LGBT movement, claim that whether you are a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, is more of a disposition or feeling about yourself than a fact of nature. And much like any other feeling, it can change at any time and for all sorts of reasons. Therefore, no one could predict who would swap this fact of their makeup, nor could one justifiably criticize such a decision. At Johns Hopkins, after pioneering sex change surgery, we demonstrated that the practice brought no important benefits. That's the pioneers at Johns Hopkins. No important benefits, folks. None. As a result, we stopped offering that form of treatment in the 1970s. They've known since the 1970s there was no benefit. They've known since the 1970s it was iatrogenic. That's what it means, right? Okay, so we've known since the 1970s, and still we're seeing this being done. Our efforts, though, had little influence on the emergence of this new idea about sex, or upon the expansion of the number of transgendered, in speech marks, like the individual that's written this. I don't think there's such a thing, among young and old. It then says, subheading, Olympic athlete turned pin-up girl. This history may clarify some aspects of the latest high-profile transgender claimant. Bruce Jenner, the 1976 Olympic decathlon champion, is turning away from his titular identity as one of the world's greatest male athletes. Jenner announced recently that he identifies as a woman, and with medical and surgical help is busy reconstructing his physique. I have not met or examined Jenner, but his behaviour resembles that of some of the transgender males we have studied over the years. These men want to display themselves in sexy ways, wearing provocative female garb. I'll pause there. This is Ray Blanchard, and the work of Ray Blanchard, these autogynephiles, AGPs, erotic location error. They're in love with the idea of themselves as a woman, and they will go to any ends, because it's a paraphilia. They will go to any ends to achieve the wanted high, the euphoria, the queer joy, the gender euphoria of achieving that sexually driven paraphilic desire. This continues. More often than not, while claiming to be a woman in a man's body, they declared themselves to be lesbians, attracted to other women. The photograph of the posed, corseted, breast-boosted Bruce Jenner, a man in his mid-60s, but flaunting himself as if he was a pin-up girl in her 20s or 30s, on the cover of Vanity Fair, suggests that he may fit the behavioural mould that Ray Blanchard has dubbed an expression of autogynephilia, from gynephilia, meaning attracted to women, and auto in the form of oneself. But the meme that your sex is a feeling, not a biological fact, and can change at any time, marches on through our society. In a way, it's reminiscent of the Hans Christian Andersen tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. The king is in the altogether, he's altogether, he's altogether, he's altogether as naked as the day that he was born. You know this, yeah? In that tale, the emperor, believing that he wore an outfit of special beauty, imperceptible to the rude or uncultured, paraded naked through his town to huzzas of courtiers and citizens anxious about their reputations. Many onlookers to the contemporary transgender parade, knowing that a disfavoured opinion is worse than bad taste today, similarly fear to identify it as a misapprehension. In other words, we stopped telling the truth. We've stopped telling the truth. This is so good. We've stopped telling the truth. It continues. I am ever trying to be the boy among the bystanders who points to what's real. I do so not only because truth matters, but also because overlooked amid the hoopla, enhanced by now by Bruce Jenner's celebrity and Anne Leibovitz's photography, stand many victims. Think, for example, of the parents whom no one, not doctors, schools, nor even churches, will help to rescue their children from these strange notions of being transgendered and the problematic lives these notions herald. These youngsters now far outnumber the Bruce Jenner type of transgender. Although they may be encouraged by his public reception, these children generally come to their ideas about their sex not through erotic interest, but through a variety of youthful psychosocial conflicts and concerns. First, though, let us address the basic assumption of the contemporary parade. The idea that exchange of one's sex is possible. It, like the storied emperor, is starkly, nakedly false. Transgendered men do not become women, nor do transgendered women become men. All, including Bruce Jenner, become feminized men or masculinized women, counterfeits or impersonators of the sex with which they identify. In that lies their problematic future. When the tumult and shouting dies, it proves not easy nor wise to live in a counterfeit sexual garb. The most thorough follow-up of reassigned people, expanding over 30 years and conducted in Sweden, where the culture is strongly supportive of the transgendered, documents their lifelong mental unrest. 10 to 15 years after the surgical reassignment, the suicide rate of those who had undergone sex reassignment surgery rose to 20 times that of comparable peers. I'm going to pause for a second there, just to let that sink in. 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate of those who had undergone sex reassignment surgery rose to 20 times that of comparable peers. That's an extraordinary thing. This is me now. That's an extraordinary thing. That means that everybody we're helping to do this, every advert on television, every representation in the TARDIS or on whatever, Coronation Street, wherever the hell it is, every representation of this pathogenic meme, every representation, every lie told to the populace by whoever it may be is a signpost saying suicide this way. For so many. That's horrific. That's horrific on a scale. Helen Joyce recently said that the parents can't back out because they're so invested in it, and I understand perfectly what she means by that. I cannot imagine in my life what it must be like to be a parent who has actively participated in giving your child this pathogenic meme and heading them on a pathway in which suicide is 20 times that of comparable peers. Horrific. I'll move on. The next subheading is how to treat gender dysphoria. So how should we make sense of this matter today? As with any mental phenomenon, what's crucial is noting its fundamental characteristics and then identifying the many ways in which that characteristic could manifest itself. The central issue with all transgender subjects is one of assumption. The assumption that one's sexual nature is misaligned with one's biological sex. This problematic assumption comes about in several different ways. And these distinctions in its generation determine how to manage and treat it. Based on the photographic evidence, one might guess Bruce Jenner falls into the group of men who come to their disordered assumption through being sexually aroused by the image of themselves as women. I'll pause there just to mention that I believe there's a story about him fumbling around with his daughter's knickers. Not a rare story. Continuing about Jenner, he says he could have been treated for this misaligned arousal with psychotherapy and medication. Instead, he found his way to surgeons who worked him over as he wished. Others have already commented on the stereotypical character of women as decorative babes. I look forward to wearing nail polish until it chips off, he said to Diane Sawyer. A view that understandably infuriates feminists and his odd sense that only feelings, not facts, matter here. Only feelings, not facts, matter here. Sound familiar? This is me, by the way. The ascendancy of the emotional over the cognitive. We suffer from a bleak, I think, deeply regressive and generally dangerous emotionalism, where emotional ascendancy is given importance. Emotion is given an importance it doesn't deserve. They are immaterial to most interactions. Immaterial, except in your personal life with your friends and your family. They are generally immaterial. Your emotions are your problem, not anybody else's. For his sake, however, I do hope that he receives regular attentive follow-up care, as his psychological serenity in the future is doubtful. Future men with similar feelings and intentions should be treated for those feelings rather than being encouraged to undergo bodily changes. Group therapies are now available for them. Most young boys and girls who come seeking sex reassignment are utterly different from Jenner. They have no erotic interest driving their quest. Rather, they come with psychosocial issues. Conflicts over the prospects, expectations, and the roles that they sense are attached to their given sex and presume that sex reassignment will ease or resolve them. It's me again. It really is an indicator, this trans ideation, this adherence to the LGBTQI plus nonsense of the trans ideation. Ideology is really a symptom. It shows you something else is wrong, which in my mind just reiterates to me, and I hope maybe to you, you can discuss it in the comments, that the second that somebody says that they're trans, this is a massive safeguarding red flag, because it's all wrapped up in sex. Just to reiterate, we were saying that young people were presuming that sex reassignment will ease or resolve their problems. The grim fact is that most of these youngsters do not find therapists willing to assess and guide them in ways that permit them to work out their conflicts and correct their assumptions. Rather, they and their families find only gender counsellors who encourage them in their sexual misassumptions. Next subheading. Those with gender dysphoria need evidence-based care. There are several reasons for this absence of a coherence in our mental health system. Important among them is the fact that both the state and federal governments are actively seeking to block any treatment that can be construed as challenging the assumptions and choices of transgendered youngsters. As part of our dedication to protecting America's youth, this administration supports efforts to ban the use of conversion therapy for minors, said Valerie Jarrett, who was a senior advisor to President Obama. In 2 states, a doctor who would look into the psychological history of a transgender boy or girl in search of a resolvable conflict could lose his or her license to practice medicine. By contrast, such a physician would not be penalised if he or she started such a patient on hormones that would block puberty and might stunt growth. What is needed now is public clamour for coherent science, biological and therapeutic science, examining the real effects of these efforts to support transgendering. Although much support is in speech marks, by the way, Although much is made of a rare intersex individual, no evidence supports the claim that people such as Bruce Jenner have a biological source for their transgender assumptions. It can't, can it? It was made up in the 1950s by John Money. Can't. So there's absolutely no reason behind it at all. It's just an insane belief. Okay. Plenty of evidence demonstrates that with him and most others, transgendering is a psychological rather than a biological matter. In fact, gender dysphoria, the official psychiatric term for feeling oneself to be of the opposite sex, belongs in the family of similarly disordered assumptions about the body, such as anorexia nervosa and body dysmorphic disorder. I think it's vital that it is categorised as that, and the sooner the better. It's simply a type of distress. It's one of those. It's body dysmorphia, it'll be anorexia. It's all that type of stuff. So what you're seeing is the reification of a psychological condition, both of which, body dysmorphia and anorexia, can be incredibly devastating to the individual, but are not helped by celebrating the mutilation of the body, by celebrating the ascendancy of a gendered soul slipped into the flesh sack of the body by a god that sometimes gets it wrong, or by the celebration of the presentation of transgenderism in the public sphere, in film, in TV. This is an iatrogenic harm. It is a medical scandal. Its treatment, the treatment of this problem, should not be directed at the body, as with surgery and hormones, any more than one treating obesity, fearing anorexic patients would be treated with liposuction. The treatment should strive to correct the false problematic nature of the assumption, and it resolves the psychosocial conflicts provoking it. With youngsters, this is best done in family therapy. The larger issue is the meme itself. The idea that one's sex is fluid and a matter open to choice runs unquestioned through our culture and is reflected everywhere in the media, the theatre, the classroom, and in many medical clinics. It has taken on cult-like features, its own special lingo, internet chat rooms providing slick answers to new recruits, and clubs for easy access to dresses and styles supporting the sex change. It is doing much damage to families, adolescents and children, and should be confronted as an opinion without biological foundation wherever it emerges. But gird your loins if you would confront this matter. Health hath no fury like a vested interest masquerading as a moral principle. That's an extraordinary article. It's not only is it very well written, I think the narrative resonates so strongly with myself, as it will with my warrior teachers when they read it, and I'm sure as it will with you. And there's one surprising aspect to me, although it won't be for others, is that was written by Paul McHugh, who worked at the University of Johns Hopkins Medical School, and he wrote it on June the 10th, 2015. We've known, the experts have known, they've been telling us, nobody's been listening, because we've listened to the vested interests of corporates, perverse lobby groups such as Stonewall, the LGBT Foundation, All Equals Charter, all the nonsense that's come out of the LGBTQ plus backside. We've listened to it and we've allowed it to go on for too long. We as individuals need to say unequivocally, there is no such thing as transgender. There is no such thing as gender identity. These are people who are unwell, and we deal with them in such a way, and we get this meme out of our society. Because if we don't, we're looking at suicide rates through the sky. We're looking at people who are going to cost us millions on the NHS. This cannot stand. This cannot stand. I think it's a quite extraordinary article, and I hope you found that interesting. Speak to you later.